Everyone knows the Taj Mahal is the world's greatest monument of love. But almost no one knows what lies beneath it. Hidden underground was a massive engineering system that lifted water from the Yamuna River, powered dozens of fountains, and brought an entire paradise garden to life. How did 17th-century engineers accomplish something so extraordinary without modern technology? This is the forgotten story behind the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal was never intended to stand alone. Its radiant white marble, shimmering with precious stones, intricate carvings, and painted blossoms created by the finest craftsmen of the Mughal Empire, demanded a setting equally magnificent. To its creators, true perfection could only be achieved when architecture merged seamlessly with nature. The monument was conceived not simply as a mausoleum, but as the earthly image of paradise itself, a sacred landscape where every flower, every tree, and every stream carried profound meaning. The surrounding garden was not decoration. It was an essential part of the monument's spiritual identity. The very word, paradise, reveals the extraordinary journey of this idea through history. Entering the English language in a Middle English text around 1175, the word is derived directly from the ancient Persian term paradisa, meaning a walled garden. Yet the association between gardens and eternal bliss reaches back far beyond medieval Europe. Across both Christianity and Islam, faiths sharing deep roots in the Old Testament and the landscapes of the ancient Middle East, the perfect garden became a universal symbol of divine peace, eternal life, and humanity's lost innocence. That vision is inseparable from the Garden of Eden, the paradise forfeited by Adam and Eve. Remarkably, during the final years of Emperor Shah Jahan's life, the English poet John Milton captured this timeless image in his epic poem Paradise Lost. Describing Eden, Milton wrote, "Rose a fresh fountain, and with many a rill, watered the garden, thence united fell, down the steep glade, and now, divided into four main streams, runs diverse." These lines echo an ancient belief shared across civilizations, that paradise is defined not only by beauty, but by life-giving water flowing endlessly through a perfect garden. For the peoples of the deserts, water represented survival itself. Long before formal gardens existed, isolated oases scattered across the Arabian wilderness offered islands of shade and fertile vegetation amid endless sands. These precious refuges became the earliest inspirations for paradise gardens. Their vivid green foliage acquired sacred significance among the Arabs, eventually becoming the symbolic color of Islam itself. When the Prophet Muhammad proclaimed Islam, the Quran described the eternal reward awaiting the faithful as a succession of magnificent terraces, each adorned with gardens more glorious than the last. Flowing through these heavenly landscapes were four rivers that nourished every living thing. Among the most celebrated descriptions found in the Quran is this remarkable passage. With o'erbranching trees in each 2 fountains flowing, in each 2 kinds of every fruit, on couches with linings of brocade shall they recline, and the fruit of the 2 gardens shall be within easy reach. Therein shall be the damsels with retiring glances, whom nor man nor jinn hath touched before them. Like jacinths and pearls, shall the reward of good be aught but good. And beside these shall be 2 other gardens, of a dark green, with gushing fountains in each fruits and the palm and the pomegranate. Centuries later, another ancient civilization would contribute its own remarkable tradition to this vision of paradise. During the 7th century, Arab armies conquered Persia, carrying the teachings of the Quran into a land whose passion for gardens stretched back over 1,000 years. Rather than replacing Persian traditions, the Islamic vision blended with an already flourishing culture of landscape design. Greek historian Xenophon recorded that the great Persian ruler Cyrus personally planted one of his own royal gardens during the 6th century BC, demonstrating that cultivating paradise was considered worthy even of an emperor. Later, Cyrus's successor Xerxes became so enchanted by the beauty of a single plane tree that he decorated its branches with ornaments of gold. Such stories reveal how profoundly the Persians revered nature, not merely for its usefulness, but for its almost sacred beauty. The union of Persian horticultural artistry and Islamic spirituality produced one of history's most influential garden traditions. Their creators sought to construct earthly reflections of the paradise promised in heaven, where every feature carried symbolic as well as practical significance. These gardens followed an elegant yet remarkably simple design. Nearly every paradise garden was enclosed within protective walls, separating its peaceful order from the harsh, dusty world beyond. Privacy, tranquility, and harmony defined the space within. At the exact center, waterways crossed one another, representing the 4 rivers of life described in sacred tradition. Some later interpreted this crossing as symbolizing the meeting of humanity and the divine. Yet the design also reflected practical engineering. In the dry climates of Persia, these intersecting channels efficiently carried water into each quarter of the garden, sustaining orchards, flowering plants, and shaded groves. Because the landscape was divided into 4 enclosed sections, these gardens became known as Charbaghs, literally meaning 4-fold enclosed gardens. Even the word bagh itself comes from Persian, simply meaning garden. The next great transformation came with one of history's most formidable conquerors. During his invasions of Persia in the 1380s, Timur absorbed far more than territory. Alongside skilled craftsmen and artisans, he carried home the sophisticated concept of the paradise garden. Returning to Central Asia, he transformed the lands surrounding his capital at Samarkand into breathtaking landscapes inspired by Persian ideals. The geography of Timur's empire offered opportunities unavailable in Persia. Mountainous terrain and greater supplies of fresh water allowed architects to introduce flowing fountains, cascading waterfalls, and terraced landscapes where water descended gracefully from level to level. Their gardens flourished with fruit-bearing trees including pomegranate, peach, quince, and cherry, alongside towering plane trees and poplars that cast cooling shade across the pathways. Flower beds exploded with iris, roses, violets, and narcissus, while an intriguing local adaptation replaced grass with clover, better suited to the region's climate. Timur named these immense royal landscapes with extraordinary poetic imagination. Among them were gardens called World's Picture and Meadow of the Deep Pool, names reflecting their ambition to recreate paradise on earth. As the ruler moved his vast nomadic court between these magnificent estates, his throne was positioned above the exact point where the 4 symbolic waterways intersected. Tall, broad-shouldered, and distinguished by his long white beard, Timur used this elevated platform to proclaim his authority over the 4 quarters of the world, placing himself quite literally at the center of his earthly paradise. This powerful Timurid tradition would eventually travel south with one remarkable descendant. When Babur established Mughal rule in India, he brought with him not only armies and ambition but also a deep appreciation for the paradise garden. Soon after capturing Agra, one of his earliest projects was the construction of cooling gardens that offered relief from the intense heat of northern India. Initially these spaces served as royal pleasure gardens, places of relaxation and contemplation amid carefully designed landscapes. Over time, however, The Mughal vision evolved into something even more profound. Successive emperors transformed these gardens into eternal resting places, creating landscapes where rulers could enjoy life surrounded by beauty before eventually being buried within the very paradise they had built. The Charbagh became not simply a garden, but a bridge between earthly existence and eternal remembrance. The Mughals also refined the inherited Timurid design. Water channels became broader and more dramatic, while large, perfectly still reflecting pools were introduced to mirror the tombs and elegant pavilions positioned where the waterways met. These reflections multiplied the beauty of the architecture, creating the illusion that magnificent buildings floated upon the water itself. Among the greatest masters of this tradition was Shah Jahan. His preference was for luminous white marble pavilions that harmonized with the flowing water and surrounding gardens. Occasionally he introduced striking visual contrasts by pairing white structures with darker companions. One notable example came in 1630, when he ordered the construction of a black pavilion within the famous Shalimar Gardens of Kashmir, demonstrating his fascination with balance, symmetry, and dramatic architectural composition. Throughout the Mughal Empire, the movement of water became an art form in its own right. Flowing channels, sparkling fountains, cascading streams, tranquil pools, fragrant blossoms, and carefully planned avenues of trees combined into living landscapes designed to evoke nothing less than paradise itself. By the time the Taj Mahal was conceived, centuries of Persian, Central Asian, Islamic, and Mughal traditions had converged into one breathtaking vision, a monument where architecture and nature became inseparable, together expressing humanity's timeless longing for eternal peace. The Mughal vision of the Paradise Garden did not end with carefully planned pathways and flowing canals. Compared with their Timurid ancestors, the Mughals elevated garden design into an astonishing display of engineering and artistry. Water became the soul of these landscapes. Elegant fountains sent graceful jets into the air, filling the gardens with a cool mist that drifted through the trees and transformed into brilliant rainbows whenever sunlight pierced the spray. Marble channels no longer carried water alone, they became works of art themselves. Craftsmen carved their surfaces with delicate fish-scale patterns so that flowing water shimmered, rippled, and reflected light in ever-changing ways. As daylight faded into evening and bats swept low across the pools in search of a drink, palace servants quietly illuminated oil lamps hidden inside carefully constructed niches behind the falling sheets of water. Their flickering glow transformed the gardens into an enchanting world where moving water, soft light, and deep shadows blended into an atmosphere of extraordinary beauty. To the Mughal emperors, these gardens represented far more than places of leisure. They became powerful symbols of empire itself. The celebrated court historian Abul Fazl explained that Akbar viewed good government much like the careful cultivation of a royal garden. He wrote, "As gardeners adorn gardens with trees and move them from one place to another, and reject many, and irrigate others, and labor to rear them to a proper size, and extirpate bad trees and lop off rotten branches, and remove trees that are too large, and gather their various fruits and flowers and enjoy their shade when necessary, and do other things which are established in the science of horticulture, so do just and far-seeing kings light the lamp of wisdom by regulation, and instructing their servants, and thus appear the standard of guidance." The comparison revealed how deeply horticulture had become woven into Mughal political philosophy. Just as a gardener pruned unhealthy branches and nurtured those capable of flourishing, a wise ruler strengthened the state by rewarding virtue, correcting disorder, and carefully guiding society toward prosperity. Yet despite the profound symbolism attached to every pathway and fountain, The Mughal emperors cherished their gardens for an even simpler reason: they genuinely loved nature. Inspired by the traditions inherited from Persia and Central Asia, they designed landscapes that awakened every one of the human senses. Visitors experienced breathtaking vistas of flowers, marble pavilions, and fruit trees stretching toward the horizon. Fragrant roses, jasmine, and flowering shrubs filled the air with perfume. The constant murmur of flowing water blended with birdsong and the hum of insects drawn to blossoms heavy with nectar. Cool marble beneath bare feet, smooth leaves brushing against the hand, and refreshing water flowing through carved channels offered a tactile experience unlike any palace interior. Finally came the taste of ripe fruit harvested directly from the orchards, completing an environment intended to delight every sense simultaneously. Like their ancestor Timur, the Mughal emperors frequently preferred conducting affairs of state beneath the open sky rather than inside enclosed halls. One surviving miniature painting portrays Babur seated upon his throne beneath a richly decorated canopy in the middle of one of his gardens. Blossoming trees surrounded him as ambassadors approached to pay their respects, demonstrating that diplomacy itself unfolded within landscapes deliberately fashioned to resemble paradise. Other contemporary paintings reveal a more private world, where emperors and nobles relaxed in secluded garden pavilions accompanied by elegantly dressed concubines. Around them bloomed vibrant flowers, fruit trees bent beneath the weight of their harvest, and powerful fountains hurled columns of water high into the air, reinforcing themes of fertility, abundance, and royal magnificence. No Mughal ruler embraced this philosophy more completely than Shah Jahan. In one of his most celebrated portraits, the emperor appears almost enveloped by flowers. Delicate irises, graceful tulips, brilliant daffodils, towering hollyhocks, and elegant campanula surround him, emphasizing both his appreciation for botanical beauty and his belief that rulers themselves belonged within carefully cultivated landscapes. For Shah Jahan, the gardens surrounding the Taj Mahal were never secondary to its breathtaking architecture. Instead, buildings and gardens were conceived together as parts of a single artistic masterpiece, each enhancing the beauty of the other until they formed one harmonious whole. A poet of Shah Jahan's own court beautifully captured the emperor's ambition, expressing his hope that the perfection of the Taj Mahal would endure beyond generations. So long as the words flower and garden remain, so long as there are residues of cloud and rain, that poetic vision guided every stage of the monument's design. Shah Jahan and his architects created the Taj Mahal garden according to the classic Charbagh, or quadripartite, plan inherited from centuries of Persian and Mughal tradition. Enclosed within protective walls, the garden revolved around two elevated marble water channels. One extended north to south, forming the principal axis of the entire complex, while the other crossed it at right angles exactly midway between the Great Gateway and the mausoleum. Together they divided the garden into four perfectly balanced quadrants. The raised water channels served practical as well as aesthetic purposes. Their elevated position allowed irrigation water to flow naturally into the surrounding flower beds and orchards. Maintaining perfect bilateral symmetry, the architects placed identical red sandstone pavilions within the boundary walls at each end of the east-west channel. Each pavilion was crowned with an elegant octagonal chhatri, where musicians were traditionally believed to have performed, filling the gardens with music that mingled with the sound of flowing water. At the precise point where the two channels crossed, the designers installed one of the garden's most celebrated features, a magnificent square pool carved from brilliant white marble. Positioned with mathematical precision, it reflected the Taj Mahal upon its still surface, creating one of the most iconic views in architectural history. Such reflecting pools were characteristic elements of Mughal gardens and are thought to have evolved from the ablution tanks found in Islamic mosques, where worshippers performed ritual purification before prayer. The pool rested upon an elegant marble platform measuring 64 feet on each side and decorated with graceful lotus motifs. At selected hours of the day, 5 fountains at its center sent graceful streams of water into the air. Around its perimeter stood another 24 fountains, while an additional 24 lined the broad central watercourse stretching between the gateway and the mausoleum. The gardeners completed the scene by filling the basin with blooming lotus flowers, ancient symbols of fertility, and brilliantly colored goldfish that glided beneath the mirrored reflection of the great white mausoleum. The geometry continued beyond the central pool. Each of the 4 principal quadrants was divided once again into 4 equal sections, producing a total of 16 carefully planned garden compartments. Although the original planting scheme cannot now be reconstructed with certainty, historians recognize that much of today's appearance reflects landscaping introduced by the British during the late 19th and early 20th centuries rather than Shah Jahan's original design. One example illustrates this transformation clearly. Today, a striking avenue of cypress trees leads visitors directly from the gateway toward the mausoleum. Although the Mughals introduced the cypress to India from Persia and Asia Minor as a powerful symbol of eternity and everlasting life, many historians believe this formal avenue was probably not part of the original layout. Nevertheless, court historian Sala recorded that the gardens contained the trees and rare aromatic herbs, suggesting that cypress trees almost certainly formed part of the original planting. As in many Mughal gardens, they were likely alternated with fruit trees, creating a symbolic dialogue between eternal life, represented by the evergreen cypress, and the annual renewal of earthly existence expressed through flowering and fruit-bearing orchards. Some garden historians have proposed another fascinating possibility. They believe the original planting beds may have been considerably lower than those seen today. If true, visitors walking along the elevated marble water channels would have looked down into the gardens from above, allowing them to reach effortlessly into the branches and pluck ripe fruit directly from the trees as they strolled through the paradise landscape. The French physician François Bernier, who personally visited the Taj Mahal during the Mughal era, described the gardens simply as being full of flowers. Although he did not identify individual species, historians believe the displays almost certainly included fragrant roses, the essential ingredient of the celebrated attar of roses first perfected by Mumtaz Mahal's grandmother, along with irises, crown imperials, and many of the spring bulbs later immortalized in the exquisite stone inlay decorating the mausoleum itself. Other contemporary accounts provide additional clues. Jahangir recorded his particular admiration for jasmine, prized not only for its delicate blossoms but also for its intoxicating fragrance, together with the flowers of the pagoda tree. The orchards almost certainly contained mangoes and oranges, while apples and pears, favorites of the Mughal court, were also cultivated. Although these fruits thrived more naturally in the cooler valleys of Kashmir, careful irrigation enabled them to flourish in Agra throughout the dry 3/4 of the year. In this way, every path, fountain, blossom, fragrance, and fruit combined to fulfill Shah Jahan's extraordinary ambition to create not merely the world's most beautiful mausoleum, but a living paradise where architecture, nature, and eternity existed in perfect harmony. The final touches on the Taj Mahal could not begin with flowers or trees. Before a single garden bed could be planted, the vast construction site had to be cleared of mountains of rubble, towering scaffolding, timber frames, workshops, and every trace of the enormous building operation that had occupied the grounds for years. Yet the gardens were never an afterthought. Long before the debris disappeared, Shah Jahan's architects had already designed every pathway, terrace, fountain, and watercourse alongside the mausoleum itself. From the very beginning, the Paradise Garden formed an inseparable part of the emperor's vision. Planning it early was essential, not only to preserve the perfect symmetry of the complex, but also to allow engineers to construct the hidden foundations beneath the landscape, particularly the sophisticated hydraulic network that would lift water from the Yamuna River and breathe life into every pool and fountain throughout the gardens. Behind the serene beauty visible today lay one of the greatest engineering achievements of the 17th century. West of the Taj Mahal, where the land gently descended toward the Yamuna River, Mughal engineers created an enormous water management system whose complexity rivaled the monument itself. They first diverted part of the river into a large settlement tank, allowing mud, silt, and other debris to sink naturally to the bottom before the clean water continued onward. From there, the water entered a long channel running parallel to the western wall of the Taj complex, approximately 250 feet away. Beside this channel rose an immense arched brick aqueduct. Broad enough to support another watercourse on its summit, the structure also carried one of the most remarkable mechanical systems of the Mughal Empire, a chain of 13 piers, the traditional Indian water lifting devices responsible for raising the river's water to higher ground. Each pier operated through an ingenious but labor-intensive mechanism. At the edge of the aqueduct stood a large roller overlooking the channel below. Wrapped around it was a thick rope attached to a heavy leather bucket. The buckets themselves were fashioned from the stitched-together hides of oxen, a grim reminder of the animal's eventual fate. To lift water, attendants guided pairs of living oxen slowly down a gentle slope, causing the roller to turn and hauling the filled bucket upward. Again and again, hour after hour, these teams repeated the process, gradually elevating thousands of gallons of water toward the gardens waiting above. Ironically, this was the very system that Babur had criticized generations earlier. Although it remained widely used throughout India, the Mughal founder regarded it as deeply inefficient. He complained that it was laborious and filthy. It takes one person to lead the ox and another to empty the water from the bucket. Every time the ox is led out to pull up the bucket and then led back, the rope is dragged through the ox's path, which is sullied with ox urine and dung. Despite Babur's objections, Mughal engineers continued relying on the proven technology, almost certainly keeping the aqueducts clean through regular maintenance while benefiting from a method that remained reliable on such a monumental scale. Once the first series of piers lifted the water onto the aqueduct, gravity took over. The water flowed through elevated channels into a large storage reservoir before continuing into another holding tank. At the southern end of this second reservoir, the engineers constructed yet another remarkable aqueduct, standing nearly 30 feet high and running at right angles to both the original aqueduct and the Taj Mahal's western boundary. Here, a second battery of piers raised the water even higher, allowing it to travel toward the western pavilion where the main east-west canal of the Paradise Garden began. Near the western entrance to the complex, the water entered an ingenious sequence of 3 connected storage tanks. Each tank was deliberately deeper than the one before it. The first measured 4.5 feet in depth, the second reached 6 feet, and the third, the closest to the Taj's walls, extended to 9 feet. This carefully calculated progression created increasing hydraulic pressure, ensuring that enough force existed to distribute water evenly throughout every canal, reflecting pool, and fountain inside the gardens. Hidden beneath paved walkways, underground pipes encased securely within masonry carried the water invisibly into the heart of Shah Jahan's paradise. The Mughal engineers displayed equal brilliance in solving another challenge. Without careful regulation, fountains located at different distances from the storage tanks would erupt unevenly, some rising strongly while others barely flowed. To eliminate this problem, they devised an extraordinarily sophisticated system using copper pots concealed beneath each fountain. Instead of feeding water directly into the fountain nozzles, the supply first filled these hidden vessels. Only after every copper pot had reached the same level did the water finally rise together through the fountainheads, causing every fountain across the gardens to burst into life simultaneously. It was an elegant solution that combined hydraulic science with theatrical spectacle, ensuring that visitors witnessed perfectly synchronized displays of sparkling water throughout the Charbagh. By 1643, the year the principal mausoleum complex reached completion, the gardens had not yet achieved the full maturity that decades of growth would eventually bring. Even so, they had already begun to fulfill Shah Jahan's extraordinary dream. Brilliant flowers filled the carefully ordered beds, while luxuriant trees spread their branches across the paradise landscape. To those who saw them, the gardens already seemed almost beyond earthly description. The court historian Salah attempted to capture their magnificence, writing, "The black mole on the forehead of all the world's pleasure spots and each of its bounty-laced flower-beds is pleasing and heart-captivating like the flower-beds of the garden of the keeper of paradise. Its attractive green trees are perennially fed with the water of life and the stature of each surpasses that of the celestial lotus tree, light sprinkling fountains gush forth sprinkling pearls of water." In short, the excellent features of this paradise-like garden such as its pathways fashioned entirely of red stone, its galaxy indicating water channel and its tank of novel design which has materialized from the crystal of purity from the world of illumination have reached a stage surpassing imagination, and the smallest particle of its description cannot be accommodated by the faculty of speech. His words reveal more than admiration. They reflect the overwhelming impact the completed gardens had upon those fortunate enough to witness them. Behind the dazzling white marble of the Taj Mahal stood an invisible masterpiece of engineering, where architecture, hydraulics, landscape design, and artistic imagination worked together in perfect harmony. The paradise Shah Jahan envisioned was not sustained by beauty alone, but by one of the most advanced water systems of its age, transforming a river flowing beside the monument into the lifeblood of one of history's greatest gardens. But the Taj Mahal's greatest secrets have yet to be revealed. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the hidden stories, forgotten mysteries, and astonishing details that most visitors never notice. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon so you never miss part 12. Until then, this is Echoes of Eras, where history comes alive.